So as I indicated, this is something that is by Dr. Rick Hanson, and I'm going to share my screen with you so we can just see a couple of the PowerPoint slides. And then we go there. Right. So as I said, this is from Dr. Rick Hanson. He's a psychologist, and he's quite the author. And his focus very often has been on the brain, and one of his most recent books, Hardwiring Happiness, is all about how the brain works. And he continues to talk about survival and the standpoint of that. It was really much more important for us to really learn about what didn't work, where the dangers were. So he talks about it in terms of carrots and sticks. It was really important for us to know where the sticks were in the sense of harm that would come to us. There probably would be a chance for a carrot again, something that would be good for us. So he focused on that, and then he did some more research, and in a relationship, he talked about it typically takes 5 good interactions to make up for a single bad one. So, or a difficult one. I mean, I'm not a fan of the word bad one, but for a more difficult one. So if we think about that ratio during the day of being able to kind of offset the typical way that the brain works 5 times to 1 times, it's an interesting notion, right? And then he also talked again about, we'll work harder to avoid something than, gaining perhaps the same amount of money. So what I find interesting also is he's talked about the idea of, are we going to be more disappointed if we've lost $20, if we find $20? I think people most times are really disappointed at losing the $20 than maybe finding the $20. Maybe we'll get that quick surge of, $20. But then what will happen is if we lost $20, we'll be thinking about it for a long time. Where'd it go? What happened to it? How could I have lost it? And continue thinking about it. And the brain is actually wired to remember those painful experiences much more so than the pleasurable ones. So we really end up saying, okay, then we do have a little bit of work and effort to do in order to remember, right? In order to bring those more positive experiences to help our brain kind of regulate and have the lens change. There's even some type of research that can be perhaps this like baseline, and that there are some people who actually are below the baseline. So it has been found that people who experience depression, that baseline can be a little bit, can be lower. So for example, they might need 7 good interactions to make up for one that was more difficult. So we all have our own place, where we fall. And of course, some people are, a little bit above the baseline, right? They always see the positive, or they have it much more easier to see the glass half full as opposed to half empty. Right. So I like this quote, and Rick actually says this, Dr. Hanson actually says that. So we can fill ourselves by the good, with the good, but it does take that effort of remembering those small moments and adding them to the pool. And I'm thinking very often of, what students do with a marble jar, right? Or sometimes teachers do with students. They, when something positive happens or whatever the theme is for the class, whatever the focus is, they'll add a marble to the jar. And as the jar gets full, and very often teachers might offer some sort of reward, but they get to see that really it is this moment, this action, this comment, and then the glass continues to get fuller and fuller. All right, I've got some more people joining us, so I'm going to let this one person in. Great. So anyway, does that make sense? I'm just curious from your, from your experiences, does this make sense? Yeah. So we can do this bit by bit. We can actually do it. So that's just a little bit of the background. And so what Dr. Hansen came up with was this process called H.E.A.L. And first of all, it's recognizing that we're having a positive experience. So, and what that means is, and this is where mindfulness comes in, and Rick is, Dr. Hansen's done so much work with mindfulness. He's written the book, Buddha's Brain. He's just coming out with a new book called Neurodharma, and it's very, very brain related, but it's very mindfulness related too. So as we're having that positive experience, we have to really be keenly aware of what the sensations are. We talk about it in mindfulness of the sense doors. So what's the texture? What's the sensations on our skin? What's internal sensations? Maybe even there's a taste associated, or there's a sound or a smell. So we have those sense doors in which to really embrace that experience and pay attention to all of them. So very often when we have a quick experience, it's very fleeting. And he uses this analogy as well too, where Velcro for the negative and Teflon for the positive, right? You probably heard that before. He's the one that came up with it. So we have to really make sure that when something good happens to us, that we're really, first of all, noticing it, but then we're purposely choosing to stay in that moment of the experience and pausing and being curious. I think that attitudinal foundation of curiosity is so wonderful to have us pause a little bit longer and saying, oh, so what is my body feeling like in this, in this moment? Where do I notice it? Do I notice it in my, my chest? Do I notice it in my hand, my feet, and just really, really being with it. Again, we're helping it sink a little bit deeper into our, I hate to say our brain, but actually also into our bodies, because from this embodied experience, right? From when we've really been with it is from which we can draw upon. But if it's very fleeting and it's just come and gone, we really won't have had any anchor or anything to really integrate it or incorporate it into our experience. So it becomes a quick passing by and something else will come in the next moment. So he also uses this when we think about absorbing, which is the idea of that we're sensing that it is sinking into us, right? So it's sinking in as we're allowing it to sink in. So it's really deepening into our body. And that motion of sinking, I think, is just so nice because it's actually an allowing and a receiving and a receptive mode. Right? So, oh yes, I'm going to let this happen, and give permission for it to happen. So you see the choices along the way, which I think are really fascinating. That's why the effort of putting things into that bucket drop by drop, right, is really, that's the effort. And then at the end, the L, the linking. So when we have a more negative or difficult experience, if we've had that embodied memory of something that's been good and meaningful for us, then we can create like that cushion, that container. And then when there's something that feels more difficult to us, either it's up and coming or something that's happened, we can really sink back into that cushion of a real life experience, I think we can very often bounce off of the positive. So because we've bounced off of that positive, we forget we have a wealth and a well of goodness that we have experienced. And so that becomes more in the forefront, right? So this positive becomes more in the forefront and the negative just kind of rests on it. And it's not the big, what do you call it? Center attraction, right? It becomes more that negativity or that more difficult experience becomes something that is held in a larger experience. So I'm curious if there's anything I can clarify for you, or if we'd like to go through an experience ourselves. Any particular questions that have come up? Okay, it's nice to see your faces too. I do appreciate that, you know? So what we're going to do now is we're going to find ourselves coming into a comfortable position. And I'll be leading us through these. I'll be leading us through these letters. So finding ourselves coming into a comfortable position and lying down is absolutely perfect. Really, there's no set way that you have to be. For this. It's you knowing your body, the time of day, and what's going to support this positive experience. So let's bring awareness to our bodies, right? As we're sitting here or lying here. And what that means is let's take a moment to notice what we notice is present in our body as far as sensations. And maybe we're labeling it as painful or not painful. But see if you can get in the notion of just describing the sensation, pressure, tingling, diffused. And once again, not overthinking anything, but let's just be in this body and knowing that we're in this body. So then we'll shift our awareness to our breathing, our breath. Noticing where we notice our breath the most. And if we're lying down or resting against a pillow, perhaps we notice our breath the most on our backs, or our sides, or our belly, whatever. It's okay. Once you've found that place where the breath is the most noticeable, making sure it's the most comfortable for you to bring your awareness to. And sense into what it feels like to be breathing on the inhale, and what it feels like on the letting go and the exhale. So what does the body feel like on the filling and the releasing? So it's truly nothing more than keeping our awareness with the movement of the body as it inhales and exhales. But truly placing our mind there, knowing that we are breathing in and that we are breathing out. And I now invite you, once you have a moment, to settle into that rocking motion of the breath. I invite you to go to a memory of a positive experience. Perhaps it's happened today, perhaps a while ago. Perhaps it seemed so subtle that it's just coming to the surface now. But let's have that have that experience, call forth that experience. And bring your awareness to what it was like in your body when you were having that experience. Thinking about temperature and texture, perhaps the density, perhaps where on your body you noticed it the most and where you noticed it the least. But let's fully bring that memory into our body. And the E stand for enriching the experience through duration and intensity, through personal relevance. So really lingering here with an open curiosity, allowing it to fill the cells, having this body feel quite alive from this positive experience. Allowing it to matter, allowing it to nourish. So continuing to breathe into it, allowing it to magnify as much as it's going to magnify. So now that it's been magnified, the A is talking about absorbing. So whatever words or images work for you to take these sensations and feel them sinking into you as you sink into the experience. So it's a relaxing, a dropping in, a fullness of spaciousness. Perhaps even recognizing this as wrapping around our breathing. So the container of this experience is large. Is our body. And not forcing anything, just relaxing into the memory, the embodied sensations is truly enough. And you can continue staying here if you'd like, or if very easily and quickly there's an experience that brought up some discomfort for you today or the other day. And you call that experience to mind. And continuing to breathe in this very full container of warmth and positivity. And allowing the memories of this experience to come into the forefront. Making sure not to follow down the rabbit hole of all the thoughts and judgments, but just remembering how you felt in this difficult experience. So now that you've called that to mind, and it's probably a bit familiar to you, let's bring our awareness back to this fullness of the positive experience. And imagine now that this container that's embraced this wonderful memory can allow for this other experience to be held, allowing this other experience to soften. Knowing that, yes, it was difficult, but yes, we are safe, we are our own true refuge, and we can support this difficult situation. And if the difficult situation tends to magnify, that's okay. But reminding ourselves from this embodied experience of being alive and vital, that we can hold this experience even if we still have sensations. Allowing the breath to be the reminder of the fullness of this body that we can use to hold on in ourselves all those positive memories, from this experience. Almost like the clouds, the cloud is passing through this giant sky, not overtaking the sky, just passing on through. So perhaps you're ready to release this more uncomfortable memory and coming back to this container, this body, this breathing body. And doing that for several rounds. And I will bring the singing bowl 3 times to bring an end to this guided meditation. So